Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. So today we're talking about the absolutely fantastic Doom Eternal for the Nintendo Switch. So after a bit of a delay, back in March 2020 this was released, but we finally got it on December the 8th on the Nintendo Switch. So let's take a look at some gameplay. Let's see how the game plays. Let's talk about what's great about the game, what's not so great. So let's start with that review. To sum up the story in just a couple of sentences, this takes place 8 months after Doom 2016, and now Earth is overrun by demons. It's your job as the Demon Slayer to try and stop the invasion and take out the Hell Priests. So that's a couple of sentences to sum up the story. With a game like Doom, I don't think the story is actually integral to the game. I think you just need to make sure the game is playing as well as it possibly can, because a lot of people probably just ignore the story and they just want to try and kill as much stuff on the screen as possible. Now, Doom 2016, if you've watched my other review for that game, you'll know how high I held that game in regard. So with a game like this, I think the expectation from a lot of people when it was announced was incredibly high. And I must say, I didn't think they would be able to do it. I really felt that the Nintendo Switch was just a little bit too far behind with Doom Eternal. I thought with Doom 2016, they just got away with it. But with this one, I was very worried when it was announced. And then I didn't think it would actually come over again when it got delayed, when it wasn't released on the same time as the PlayStation and Xbox version. Again, I was very worried, but then luckily it got shadow released. It was frustrating that we don't get a physical copy of the game. That was something I really liked, having it on a cartridge on the first one. So that is a little bit of a frustration, but I must say Panic Button have worked wonders again with the game. It looks fantastic. One of the main concerns I had with the game was the load times. When you initially start the game, it took about 90 seconds to actually load the level. Now, if you're anything like me, you will die an awful lot as you're playing through the game. So this was a little bit of a worry. But I noticed as you're actually, when you die and then you load the checkpoint, it loads very, very quickly. I was actually very surprised at just how fast it loaded. So that initial load time is quite slow, like I say, about 90 seconds to actually load the level. But then whenever you need to load a checkpoint, it does load very quickly. So it's something that I was worried about, but luckily it's a very quick game to actually load. So the game comes in at a 17.5 GB download, so quite a big download. And currently there's no physical copy of the game, and I would be very surprised if they ever make a physical copy of the game, unless something like Super Rare Games or something like that gets involved. It's likely it's going to be a digital download only. And luckily we do have motion controls on the game as well, so it's another plus point if you do enjoy playing this game in handheld mode. And that's what I've reviewed the game as and played the game as. It's always been in handheld mode, and it does really look fantastic on that slightly smaller screen when you're playing in handheld mode. I really did feel as if there would be a lot more frame drops when playing this game, because the game is so big and you're playing it on predominantly a handheld console. It actually held up really well. It didn't drop below 30 frames per second, or certainly not noticeably dropping below 30 frames a second. I don't want to make this sound like too much of a criticism, but there's quite a noticeable difference when you're playing the game graphically from when you are outside and when you're inside a building. And because obviously you're in a lot of broken down buildings, sometimes you will turn obviously the stick to look outside, and then you turn the stick to look back inside, and it's almost a little bit like you're playing two separate games there. But like I say, I don't want it to sound like a criticism, because it still looks great. It's just quite noticeable from when you go outside to inside. As much as the game itself is all out action and you're trying to kill as much stuff as possible, there is a lot of tactics that go into the gameplay, because when you are low on health, you have to obviously perform those glory kills or handheld takedowns in order to get health back and get ammunition back. So there is quite a lot of tactics that go into the game. It's just, again, another fun aspect of the game that maybe you don't realize until you've carried on playing and you reach that boss and you realize that you're low on health. But a really, really fun aspect of the game is just how much tactically you have to play this game. I can't remember the exact title of the series on Netflix, but if you watch the video game series on Netflix and you saw the interviews with the guys who created Doom, I really think they'll be very pleased at how the series is turning out. It just goes to show how well liked the series is, and maybe that influence that they created all those years ago, what it must be maybe 30 years ago now, just how much of an impact that's had, because it still feels like those classic Doom games. You still get all the vibes of Doom 64 or Doom 1 or 2 or 3. It really does feel like those classic Doom games. The music does play a critical role to how the game comes across and that classic feel of the game. It's got that kind of heavy metal feel to it, and that's because it's almost like a heavy metal game. There's so much going on the screen, there's so much destruction that you kind of need that loud music to go with it. And every kind of boss battle, any enemy you approach, the music really does sum up the game, and it creates just a really great feel when you're playing that game, as well as obviously giving some shock value to the game as well. There are a few scary parts, a few parts where you might jump, but I wouldn't say it's particularly scary as much as maybe gore and horror on the screen. There are just a couple of negatives for this game for me, and that's one, that it's only available digitally. I really like having games physically. I'm a collector, so it's a shame that we'll never get to see this physically. And secondly, it's just the price point, $49.99. It's quite a lot of money. The game itself is only probably 12 to 16 hours long. There is obviously online games, and there is obviously arcade mode as well. Like Doom 2016, we're unlikely to ever see a price drop for this game. Doom 2016 is still around that $49.99 mark, and it's a bit of a challenge now to pick it up physically. So I would recommend getting this game, but you are going to take a hit on your wallet when you do buy this game. But you won't regret it. It's a fantastic game. It's probably one of the most perfect ports we'll ever see on the Switch. So with that being said, I would definitely recommend this game. Thanks a lot for watching the video. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to help the channel to grow, and I look forward to seeing you in the next review.